And I'm back with another photography tip regarding Cappadocia. More specifically, how to photograph hot air balloons. When I got to Cappadocia, I did not know that the hot air balloons were controlled by the government. Therefore, if at some point they decided that the air balloons could not go up for whatever reason, no air balloon could go up. I ran into a couple of people who had been to Cappadocia in the past, and they returned again because when they went, they were not able to ride or see the hot air balloons. So with that being said, when you go to Cappadocia, do your research and find out when it is more likely that the balloons will actually take off. I would recommend that you stay for a minimum of 2 nights. That way you get to experience it in 2 ways. The first one, you actually get to ride it, and the second time, you just dedicate the entire time to photograph it. To do this, you must wake up super early. We're talking waking up between 3:30 and 4 in the morning. Sometimes your tour guide will come and pick you up at 4:30, sometimes 5. In my case, they picked us up around 5:45, which was not that great because I wanted to photograph the hot air balloons as they were being inflated in the dark so that I get that contrast of the bright, warm light versus the cool tones that were surrounding the area. But soon after we arrived, we're talking 10-15 minutes, the sun was already coming up. For this trip, I decided to bring only 2 lenses, the Canon 28-70 f2 and the Canon RF 70-200 f2.8. I felt that by bringing both of those lenses, I was covering a large focal range. Now, I must admit that I did regret not bringing this monster, which is the Canon RF 800mm lens with a fixed aperture f11. Which in reality is not great for low light capabilities. However, when the sun came up, it would have been a perfect lens to capture really tight shots of people and the texture in the balloons. For my camera setting, I decided to keep the camera on shutter priority and keep it at least 1/125th of a second and let the camera decide what aperture and what ISO to use for the correct exposure. Often I found myself underexposing by 1/3, just so that I get that contrast between the light and the darkness. Once the sun came out, I wanted photos where the sun was coming across from me, basically. I wanted just one side of the balloons to be illuminated, as that would give more dimensionality to the images. So I personally was avoiding shots where the sun was behind or in front of the balloons. After all was said and done, on the first day, I decided to put the camera down and just enjoy the experience and the scenery. So make sure that you do that from time to time, because sometimes we get so caught up with wanting to catch amazing photos that before you know it, the experience is done with and you didn't get to really enjoy it. Moving forward with the second day, I woke up early once again. It was roughly around 5:15 in the morning. I grabbed my gear and I went to the rooftop of my hotel. And by the time I got there, the balloons were already being inflated, so it was really beautiful to witness that and to capture it in photos. From time to time, I would take breaks so that I got to enjoy the experience, as I mentioned earlier. But at the same time, that was creating opportunities for the lighting conditions to change and therefore capture a diverse set of images. So while I was there, I took photos before the sunrise, as the sun was rising, and after it was completely out. Some of my favorite shots happened to be before the sun was out, where I got to see the contrast of the light and the dark. And then my second favorite set of photos when the sun was already out and it was kissing the balloons on the right-hand side, those giving it dimensionality. It was on the second day that I realized how great it would have been if I brought this lens. Now granted, this is a big lens, but it's really not that heavy. And since the sun was already out, I could have captured really tight shots of the balloons and the people in the balloons. However, the 70-200 did a really good job considering that I was pretty far away, which leads me to the next tip. If you go to Cappadocia, if I'm not mistaken, that part of Turkey is composed of multiple little cities or towns, one of them being Goreme and another one being Uçhisar, which is where we stayed. Uçhisar happens to be the highest point of Cappadocia, and from there you get to look down and get incredible views of the balloons, of the sunrise, and of the sunset. Now, looking back and having gone through the experience myself, I would recommend that photographers bring the same type of lenses that I brought, because you want to have a wide to showcase establishing shot, and you also want a 70 to 200 to get those tight shots, to show the texture, show emotion, so show a little more than what the average person would be able to show with a regular camera. But I understand that not everybody can bring such lenses. They're expensive and they're heavy. So if you happen to have a 24 to 105, that will be a great option. Or if you happen to bring the Canon 28 to 300, that will be an amazing option. It's just that that lens would not perform well in low light. You could bump the ISO, but you know that the image quality is going to suffer a little bit. On the other hand, if you have a 100 to 400 at f4, you can get away with shooting in low light with a higher ISO, and you will be able to show a lot more than the average person. So I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please consider liking, subscribing, and hitting the bell notification for future videos. Until next time, take care.